It's recording. Were we not recording the whole time?
It's
me! Is that what you're wearing, seriously?
Yes, seriously. It's nice.
Why didn't you shirt?
Change it.
Because it looks like you woke up that way.
The enemy can't have a hold into this as much as he wants to try to attack it and have his schemes to not make technology work. Hi.
Oh, wow. I'm so glad you changed your clothes.
You bullied me into it. What other choice did I have?
I don't know. Coffee?
No.
Why not? It's good. I made it.
Good. I'm fine.
It's Starbucks. Yes. So we're here. We did it.
We are here.
We did it.
Yes,
What's
yes.
today's date?
This is January 4th, 2025.
The 4th. Yeah. We've been trying to do this for a long time. I think we wanted to do it like right after Thanksgiving, and that just didn't happen.
F24? Yes.
Yeah.
That's not a long time.
Well, I mean,
We've been planning for it for a long time.
We've been planning for it for a long time, but I think you were busy, I was busy. Now we're not busy because it's Saturday.
It's Saturday. You have the coffee. We had time for showers.
And you changed your clothes and ate a McMuffin. She's going to be great, you guys. Don't worry. So, why are we here?
We have our testimonies of our experience in a narcissistic and abusive childhood. Mm-hmm. And our stories worth telling. And maybe sharing our freedom story is also an opportunity for others to be able to find their freedom in such an environment as well. On top of that, we're Christians, and not a lot of Christians speak on these matters because it's a taboo topic, and honesty and authenticity has been a scary thing when it comes into this kind of realm of life and trauma. So yeah. I think our story is worth telling. And especially as a brother-sister duo, there's not a lot of folks out there who do brother-sister duo talking about trauma and speaking into it, because a lot of people would like to avoid those kind of things.
You seem nervous.
No. I'm trying to put the words together.
Yeah, so I mean...
Are you nervous?
No, I'm fine.
See, imagine if I was on coffee.
No, you're fine. We're fine. Yeah, no, I think, so I'm Zach.
I'm Ellie.
We are siblings, brother and sister. Yeah, this podcast originally didn't start as a podcast. Originally it started off as a blog that I wanted to write, just because last year I was getting tired of being just like always working and not really participating, in ministry, involved in the church or whatever. And so I thought, well, maybe my ministry can be just talking about my story. So I originally came up with a blog idea, and I actually started writing about 8 different blogs, kind of talking about my story. And then eventually I kind of just thought, you know what, I think what would be better would be for this to be a podcast, because there's something different about talking about things. There's something different about hearing somebody versus, just reading words, especially in today's age. Most people don't even read a headline of a news article because their ADHD takes over. And so I thought, well, you know what, this would be an awesome opportunity for us to kind of talk about our story, because we have an abuser in our lives. And what's interesting about our story is that we have the same abuser, but we experienced different forms of abuse.
It's really gnarly when we sat down to talk about our stories or to rekindle our relationship. Mm-hmm. And then really noticing the impact of how I was affected versus how you were affected.
Mm-hmm.
And the end goals of that were essentially to draw us apart.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the healing is a really powerful thing. And knowledge is a powerful thing too, to know the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And based on our abusers' plans that they had, we should not be in the same room together.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's, and we'll go more in depth. You know, this is obviously our introduction video. This isn't. We're not going to go hardcore into details, but I think just to kind of give context to our story, you know, abuse is a word that is just thrown around so nonchalantly these days. It's almost unfortunately, it has almost lost its impact and it's lost its gravitational pull to make people actually feel something. Because now abuse is just like, oh, someone raised their voice at me, you were abusive, you know. But when we talk about abuse, you have to realize we grew up in a Christian home. Mm-hmm. Our parents were pastors, and not to get into too much detail, but you know, Ellie and I, we have the same mother but different fathers, and her biological father is the abuser in the story.
Yeah.
And so I broke away first, which is a really weird thing to say, but you know, part of how we got here today is because the steps and the decisions that we decided individually to make. And I broke away a little bit more. Now, actually, it's about 10 plus years ago. I broke away.
Is it really already 10 years?
It's a little bit more. In
like 12 years.
No, it's about 10 and a half.
Okay.
In the summer, it'll be 11. I mean, I kind of broke away a little bit before then, but officially I broke away about 10 years ago. I had to walk away from my family. I not like truly walk away, but I was the first person in the family, despite abuse being there. You know, I walked away a long time ago, and fast forward, you know, Ellie broke away. I don't know.
I only broke away
like a year ago, officially.
No, it'll be 2 years in March or April. No, it'll be more than that. It's a year and a half already.
No, but in like 2 months, it'll be 2 years because you broke away in Easter of 2023.
Yeah.
I know that because she called me while I was about to go on stage and perform. Well, not perform, but do worship for our church back in the day. She called me right as I was about to go on. I was like, I can't talk. What do you want? But
what did I say on that call then? I don't remember.
No, you texted me.
Oh yeah.
I said I can't go on. Is something wrong? And you're like, can I move in with you for a few days? And I was like, yep. And that never changed. She's been here.
Well, no, I've been here since then. I didn't move back out. That was my breakup fight.
Yeah, that was kind of...
Ooh, that'll be a doozy to talk about later.
Yeah, so, so case in point, this is a lot of just informational vomit. But, we have a story. We have reasons for why we chose to do what we did, and what we chose to do both was walk away.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just... choosing to not be involved in the drama. I'm talking about full-on not having a relationship with said abuser.
But it also then affected your relationship with the entire family dynamic at that point, too, where you basically broke up with everybody else because we didn't know how to cope with you leaving.
Well, so I mean, and we'll definitely get into that. So that's kind of our story. We're here to talk about the abuse that we endured. We're here to talk about how we saw the truth and what got us to seeing things for what they really are.
Yeah.
And And when we got to the crossroads of having to make it a decision of relationship or no relationship with the abuser, um, which for the record, that's what I'm going to call him going forward, the abuser.
Yeah.
But we all had to get there. We all had to get to that crossroads. And it'll be interesting because, like I said, my sister and I, same abuser, different forms of abuse on purpose. And because of that, there's a different takeaway. The abuse that we both endured is not more important or more extreme than the other necessarily.
It was different on purpose.
But the damage, that's one of the ways that it can create a conflict just between the two of us. Because for a while, I was like, get away from him. And she was like, well, I want to try and blah, 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 blah.
Well, there's a lot of variables when it comes into abuse. And my abuse was obviously different than yours. So therefore, I was coping differently than you. And then also, take it back into just being in a Christian environment, you would believe that we're supposed to stay in this relationship, like that God put it on our plate for a reason. It doesn't always mean to stay, though. And that's the other impact that I was tossing and turning with, of I'm supposed to stay in this relationship. Why would I get out of this relationship with my abusive father? Because God trusted me with that father for a reason. But to an extent, he still trusted us to have that relationship. But I think at the end of the day, the Lord has a plan with our story. Whether or not the people are healthy or not, the Lord has a plan with our story. And there's freedom in the stories that we're in, whether it be directly in a Christian environment or not.
Yeah, and our story isn't just for Christians. Our story is, I won't speak for you, but I would say that our story is for anybody who has found themselves in a situation similar to ours.
Yeah.
And they're having to come to a decision, do I stay or do I go? And at the end of the day, everyone has to make that choice. But we as Christians both chose to go.
Yeah.
And there's a different weight to that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, we thought it would be important to have this podcast was we made a choice. And we're not here to tell you what choice to make. That's between you and God and your situation. But there's so many stories of people who chose to stay.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of stories of people who chose to go. And those who chose to go, you face judgment. You face a lot of feedback, and there's kind of a stigma in the church of kind of like what you were saying of like, well, he's my dad. The Lord wouldn't have given me my dad if I wasn't supposed to have a relationship with my dad. It's like, show me a verse that says that.
Yeah. And then I've had people, or I've heard people at least bring up the verse about honor your father and mother. Yes, absolutely. However.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in my life, have, when I've told them like, oh yeah, I don't have a relationship with, my father, they're,
but he's your dad.
Or people often say, well, I'm praying that the Lord restores it. And I'm like, don't.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want it. And that's kind of the thing, right? It's like, I remember, anyway, we'll talk about that later. But so this is us. This is why we're here. We're here just to talk about the messy truth, the stuff that a lot of people are going through, but maybe aren't hearing a lot of content as what is a biblical reason to step away?
Yeah.
Like, at what point should I, as a person, know when that boundary line of, no, this is too much, this is grounds for walking away.
Right.
Because that's not taught in the church. No one teaches you how to break up with a parent.
Or just how to navigate, what do you do after you break up? with that person, because I know your healing journey is vastly different than mine as well when it came into making that decision of separating.
Well, and for context, I'm 33, you are
27.
I walked away originally when I was 17, but I officially walked away and made my choice to walk away when I was 21.
Yeah, and
so we were at different ages. We were
different
at different
points.
lives. So
and I only walked away at like 25.
Right.
And wherever I was in my life at that point too.
Yeah.
Compared to now, so I'm fresh. I'm raw.
Well, and so because of that, and I think we can kind of touch briefly on this. My abuse was more mental, emotional, sometimes physical, but my abuser made me the reason for why his life was horrible as a child. Like me as a little kid.
Yeah.
His goal was to destroy me and to isolate me. Your abuse was...
My abuse was emotional, mental. There was, I want to say, like, financial abuse too in the mix, financial trauma.
Well, so I think you're right, and so our abuser, for me, what had happened was...
I'll hold it.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He married my mom when I was very young, about 5. It was actually my 5th birthday that they got married. Her birthday too.
Yeah.
And
many celebrations.
Yes. And that's not us making light about that. That's just you have to laugh. If not, you cry.
Yes. Because we cry.
But ever since then, me, it was, he tried to separate me and my mom. And he pretty much told me as a child, I can't have a relationship with your mom unless you're out of the way.
Yeah.
And so I was the rotten black sheep, I was the reason why his life was horrible. And then he had my sister and our brother.
Yeah.
And he had 2 separate worlds. There was a world for my mom and I where he abused us and made us the enemy. And then there was this other world where he treated you guys as we're a perfect happy family. And the reason why things are bad is because of those 2.
And the reason why
we didn't really know that. Like, no. I didn't really know, I didn't really know that that's what happening. He was doing. Yeah. But I would say, in a way, you were gaslit and brainwashed while, think of it this way. I was Cinderella.
Okay.
I was the one that was abused and was in rags and no one cared about me. And you were a nice stepchild who, was getting all this special treatment, and you saw that there was an imbalance, but it was normalized. And yet we were right next to each other.
Oh, literally.
And so that's what I think is so interesting about our abuse stories. We both didn't share the exact same abuse from our abuser. We were craftedly, that's not the right word, but on purpose, the abuse that he decided to inflict on both of us was different. And case in point, you didn't really come to that truthful realization until about 3 or 4 years ago. You knew that things were obviously wrong and not good, but
again, it was normalized.
So for me, the abuse was right there from the beginning. Yeah. I knew as a child, this was the situation day one, as a 6-year-old.
But see, what I remember growing up was the fact that, obviously 6 years older than me, I was led to believe that you and Mom, you just had your life. You guys depicted your life to be your own duo.
Right.
And then my father, thank you. My father then made a world, it felt like he was the hero in the story.
Yeah.
Where he's like, you know what, we'll do our own world and we'll do our own thing. But then one of the last things I'll say about this is that one of the most impactful lies that I had to realize in my healing journey was that he made me believe that our mom didn't love me and that she hated me. And that's such a targeted abuse plan where it couldn't work for you. And just thinking of the psychology, for me to try to understand him, I won't. But to go that deep of my mom is half of me. Like, I am her. And you're telling me she hates me? Or you're making me believe that she doesn't love me? And just that blueprint plan, it worked for 20 plus years.
Yeah, so, and so there's a different reality. There's a different healing process for sure. And there's just a different story that both of us have where, I like I said, the abuse that we both endured were so different. And because they were so different, it affected our relationship for a long time. And the choices that I made to walk away, contributed to that. But we're at a point where that's been healed, and we've talked about things, and so we're at a point where it's like we know we aren't the only ones who have ever experienced this. We know that there's other people who may not have the exact similar story, but they know what it's like to be under the tyranny of an abusive parent, and we're here to say it doesn't have to be that way. Now, granted, everyone has to make that choice of whether or not they're going to choose to stay in that relationship or if they're going to walk away. And we're just here to explain why we walked away. And we know that there are going to be people who disagree with us. We know that there will be people who don't understand, and they will think that we made the wrong decision, and then that's fine. But we're here to still share our story. And just because it offends people doesn't mean that we shouldn't share it. We're literally talking about how we walked away from a man who intentionally wanted to destroy us. And that's worthy of being talked about. And it's worthy of talking to each other because it helps us live in reality.
Well, another part of the abuser of any psychology background is that the silence is powerful too. And not speaking up and not speaking about your story. I mean, it worked for our entire childhood. There was that absence of just not talking about how you're being treated, how I'm being treated. And it worked for years. So if we just kept in that plan of not...
But trust me, it didn't work. But yes.
But all that to say, if we were to still play as his puppets to not speak, it's just a setup for disaster, a setup for division, and it takes away the power of us speaking.
Yeah, sorry, there's lawnmower people outside. I was like,
How rude.
Who's making that noise? Yeah, so, we'll go more into depth of stuff. I think this will be probably... The next time you see us, hear us, we'll be in a different situation.
He's leaving me.
Yeah. Well, I live up north.
And I don't.
And she doesn't. She lives here in my house.
Thank you.
But I live elsewhere. And so the next time you see us, it'll be a different setup. It'll be a different orchestration of visually. But... the plan is, I think the next steps are, we're just going to kind of go through it. We're going to go through our history.
Yeah.
We're going to go through our healing. We're going to go through how we both came to our decision to walk away. And then from there, there's going to be a bunch of topics where we'll talk about, like we just briefly talked about how other people's perspectives, of like, I don't think you did the right thing, blah, 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 or not talking about it. Like, how do you make a decision like this when your family disagrees? So, how do I say? Oh, spoiler alert. That's the word I was going to say.
Oh.
You know, we don't have a relationship with our brother because right now our brother, who was also a victim of brainwashing and gaslighting, he believes our abuser. And
he believes he's the hero.
He believes he's the victim and that he's on the right side of history.
Correct. And that our mom is the enemy. And
that's just a testament to how powerful our abuser has been in the lies and the reality that he has allowed our brother to live. So we have another sibling, and for right now, he doesn't talk to anybody really, because he doesn't want a relationship. And so...
still love him.
Yeah, still love him.
Still love him tremendously.
You know, but, you know, that's a reality of our situation as well. Holy cats.
And dogs? Is this a sign we should finish?
No, I mean, we probably should. It's just, every time I've done recordings, every time I've done projects and recordings, it's like
a lot more goes on.
It's like lawn maintenance crews have a sixth sense that I'm trying to record and it's time to bring out all the machines and make it loud. It's ridiculous. But no, we're going to kind of go through our journeys together. I think, and it's going to be structured in a way where it's not going to be choppy.
No.
You know, it's kind of like our Bible study that we're doing. For whatever reason, we're doing Genesis, and now we're going to skip to Job and go back to Genesis. Hate it, but that's what we're going to do. Our thing is going to kind of just be more linear. It's going to be about, you know, what my abuse looked like and kind of go through all those years of where I got to now.
Yeah.
You'll do yours.
Right.
You know, and we'll kind of come together and just kind of talk about other things. And, you know, we hope that, you know, whether you're hearing about this on YouTube, whether you're looking at clips that we're posting on Instagram, we hope that you guys respond and ask questions. And if there's things that you want us to talk about or comments where you're like, hey, you know, this is similar to what I grew up with, or this was my story, you know.
Right.
You know,
private message us too of your story too, for privacy reasons too.
For sure, you know, but you know, I mean, I think there's always going to be stuff that we can talk about here on the podcast, but you know, we also know that this will be. We hope that this will be something healing for you guys.
Absolutely.
And we hope that, you know, we're not therapists, we're not counselors, but we're people who have had to go to counseling and therapy. And we can offer advice that worked for us and caused us to get to a certain point, you know, in our lives. Mm-hmm. And that may not even cause you to shift your perspective or make a decision for yourself, but sometimes there's something about asking somebody for advice just to kind of get feedback that's powerful. So,
well, and that alone is its first step to a different path, and it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be unknown territory, and that's why we decided to build the podcast, was to start paving a pathway of the unknown to others, but it's known to us now.
I think that's one of the episodes that we have scheduled where we're going to talk about, you know, how do we as siblings talk about abuse, because I have 10 plus years on you. Not just in age.
Thanks.
No, like, I mean, I'm older than you, but I did this a long time ago.
And back then, 10 years ago, it was unheard of, absolutely. Versus now, 2 years ago, it was somewhat normalized, but nothing close to where you were at.
So, I mean, there's a wide age gap in terms of healing, in terms of perspective, where we won't necessarily fight, but we'll have some pretty heated conversations of where I'm like, no, that's not the case, you know, just because as someone who, like, not to toot my own horn, but it's like, I've gone around the world in terms of a journey. Yeah. You're just leaving America for the first time. Yeah. and you have yet to go other places. And it's not a slam against her at all.
It's just acknowledging of where I'm at.
Acknowledging of her still being in a place that's relatively new, that she's still navigating, and I'm like, I know these things like the back of my hand. Like I'm this ain't my first rodeo, you know. And so that I think that'll be an interesting topic because we've had times where she'll tell me like she'll be talking about something that's so um, so deep and affecting her heart in the current moment,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'll be like,
You're so.
I'm like, and she'll be like, yeah. She's like, I know this doesn't affect you. I'm like, no, it does affect me. The difference is
You're
just
so seasoned.
I have calluses
Yes.
here. You just burned your hands, and you're
Yes.
still tingling, you know, because you touched the hot frying pan. I have cooking hands where I can just pick it up and move it. Doesn't mean it doesn't affect me, but there's a difference. When you become more seasoned in going through life, things affect you differently. Things that used to be so heavy and catastrophic are no longer these huge mountains. Now they're just these little hills that you have to watch out for, you know? So that I know will produce a lot of content just there, you know? So there's a lot of things that we will talk about, a lot of things that will come up, hopefully just from conversations and doing the podcast with each other, but hopefully from suggestions and comments from you guys that'll help us evolve this channel to be what God wants it to be. You know, at the end of the day, we're not doing this because we want to be internet famous. We're doing this because in a day and age where technology is so rampant, we don't have an excuse to not do something for the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
You know, we really don't. And for me in my life, I'm more of like, I'm not that I'm against church or whatever, but like a lot of times when you go and you become part of a group or a service ministry, there's really nothing like this where it's like, let me go and talk to people who've been abused. Like I need an abuse support group at my church. You know, there's prayer ministry, there's serving ministry, you know, but there's not like a ministry here. And sometimes it's even hard to do a ministry like that in a church setting, because then you have to adhere to, okay, what's your curriculum? What are you going to talk about?
Yeah.
What are your books? You know, and sometimes even if you offer it,
do you have a psychologist? Do you have a
right.
doctorate?
And so it's just like, well, we don't have any of that, but that's still not an excuse for us to not do this. So we're not saying we're against church at all. It's just this probably wouldn't fit in our current church setting, just because that probably make people feel really uncomfortable anyway, because you're talking about a really touchy subject.
Very.
But this just kind of gives us our freedom to be accountable to the Lord. And, you know, you guys don't see this, but we pray before every episode. And maybe that's something we'll do before we start every podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll just record it. Just as proof.
Be part of our prayer.
Yeah, be part of our prayer. Pray with us, you know. You know, and because of this, because of what we're doing, we also know that the enemy is going to do whatever he can do to disrupt this, to make excuses for why we can't do this. We're going to get sick. Our recording equipment won't work. We'll get too busy, you know. So, I mean, the enemy is going to do whatever he can to stop us talking about stuff. So we do want you guys praying for us, because we don't know what this new year holds for us, and we don't know what challenges await us, but we do know that because we're doing this, we will experience a different threat level from the enemy that we weren't experiencing last year, because now we're speaking up. Now we're fighting. Yeah. We're fighting against stuff. Yep. So,
and the enemy's not happy. The enemy wasn't happy 10 years ago.
No. You know, and that's the thing too, you know, the enemy's not going to be happy. Again, we're probably going to get a lot of negative feedback from...
I expect it.
From Christians, even because both of our stories involve counseling, not just your traditional counseling, but spiritual counseling and spiritual healing. Yeah. And that's taboo even with the Christian realm. You know, there's people,
there's people who don't believe in that extent of healing.
We're going to get hate comments from all the cessationists who are going to be like, the gifts ended. Whoever healed you was from Satan. You know, I mean, I hope that's not what you guys believe, but I mean, I've had enough. I've lost friendships over the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and it's the gifts of the Holy Spirit that help me realize the truth of my situation. Not just the therapy. The therapy was great too, but you and I both went through hardcore healing that was not within the confines of a therapist with medication. It was an awe-inspiring God moment, and that is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people to hear. So we know we're going to get pushback on all fronts, and we're going to get pushback from all the secular folk who are going to be like, well, this is why religion sucks. You shouldn't been, you shouldn't. Okay, fine. You're allowed to have your comments. You're allowed to have your
feelings.
We live in America, so freedom of speech, by all means. That's your right to communicate whatever it is you want to communicate, But we're here to talk about our story, and our story will be offensive to some people, but we also know it's going to help other people figure out where they need to go. And at the end of the day, we don't want you to borrow our story for your life. We want you to go to God at the end of the day. Now, I will always go on the record and say, I think that if you're in an abusive situation, you need to leave. I'm never going to say God wants you to be in that situation. And if anyone is telling you God wants you to be in that situation, you better take that to the Lord.
Yeah. Right.
But that'll be another episode for another day. But we know what we're talking about is going to upset the supernatural.
Yeah.
It's going to upset the enemy. It's going to upset the spirits within other people in the comment sections. But we also know that it's going to allow people to have a breakthrough and see things differently, and
that's why we're talking.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about our testimony, our walk here. This is how we can help the kingdom, and it's not us saying that we have all the answers. We don't, but we came to certain answers based off of the questions that we had to ask ourselves in the midst of the abuse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's...
So join us in the episodes to come.
Yeah,
because it's going to be a bumpy ride, and it's going to be a bumpy ride on purpose. Mm-hmm. And I now believe, 5 years ago me didn't believe, that good things could happen in the uncomfortable. But you have to go through the things that strain you and make you uncomfortable, because what if that's what you need to do in order to find another aspect of freedom from the Lord that you wouldn't have received if you just stayed stuck? But again, 5 years ago me would say that's stupid and turn around from it.
How old were you? 22 back then?
5 years ago, yeah.
22. Where were you at 22? Where was I 5 years ago?
That was 2019. I was up north running away from everybody.
Oh, yeah. You did do that.
Yeah. I was in my own hiatus.
And then she left to go to another state because going up north wasn't far enough.
Yeah. And then I tried to have my own life without you guys. And it, at the time, was nice. Mm-hmm. But that was the stronghold where the enemy had a really good tight hold on me. Yeah. And then the Lord has a perfect timing, and now we're here, and we'll talk more in detail of how that all panned out. Yeah. But I'm excited just to see what's to come. This is only day one, but imagine 2 years from now, Lord willing, 5 years from now, if at the end of the day, our testimony, given there's people that are going to have hate or have arguments of what we're speaking on, if it even just gets one person to find freedom in the Lord, then that's good. Yeah. It'd be awesome to get the heaven crowded with even more people just because of our testimony, but that's not because of us. It's about the God story and us.
And that's the thing. Like, we're not part of we're not going to be blasphemous about anything. We're not saying, like...
What are you saying?
No, like we're not coming up with our own theology here.
No.
We're not saying, you need to be a particular denomination. We're not part of the... Like, I go on Instagram all the time, and I don't know how I got on this algorithm, but I cannot escape Catholics fighting with Orthodox, fighting with Protestants, and back and forth. And it's like... Yeah, that's not expanding the kingdom, and we're not here to create a fight theologically. Now, I will say, you and I have differences, theologically speaking, about our abuser and what he's facing, and and that'll be an interesting episode.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
I don't think our opinions have changed much since we last talked about it. But we're not saying anything, like, we're not adding to the Bible, we're not adding to God.
We're just speaking our truth.
We're just speaking
I should say
experience.
that. Thank you.
No, I mean, we're expressing, the fact of the matter is, someone who was supposed to love us chose to try and kill us, death by 1,000 paper cuts. And when you hear our story, there should not be any excuse from anybody, whether it's us, family, friends, or listeners, who will say, yeah, but.
Yeah.
Because once you kind of hear, and granted, we know that there's people out there who have a far worse abuse story than us. So this isn't a competition. Right. This isn't to say, look how hurt we were, give us attention here. This is just to say that when you really look on paper.
Yeah, and the matter of fact, yeah. And
you look at the fact that there was a person who was entrusted to have a responsibility to be a good father and to be a good husband, and chose. Yeah. Chose. We're not talking about didn't know enough, had no idea what the word therapy was until 2024. We're talking about someone who chose to intentionally damage and hurt people so that way he could get what he wanted from us. Under no circumstances should anyone say, well, I think you should probably stay in a relationship with someone who wants to do that to you. No. I'm not saying leaving abuse is easy. I'm not saying that, just get in your car and go. Like, it's hard to leave, but, there isn't going to be anybody, I hope, after hearing our story and hearing what we endured, go like, oh yeah, this is someone who can listen. This is someone who can, if you just went to the right therapist, things would just swap and things would just
click.
It's like, brah, this has been going on for 30 plus years, and if anything, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And not in the good way that it's getting worse. It's just.
How would it be a good way getting worse?
Well, like.
I think getting worse is always a bad thing. Well, I know it would be a good thing.
I kind of think of, like, do you ever, bad example, this is not biblical, but remember the cartoon?
Thanks for the warning.
You're welcome. Avatar: The Last Airbender?
I don't know, maybe.
Yes, you do.
Probably.
The little guy with the arrow tattoo, bend all the elements.
Yeah. But...
So there's an episode where Zuko, he's the bad guy.
Yes.
He decides to do a good thing.
Yes.
And because of that, he actually gets sick.
Yes.
And he starts dying.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because of, in the show, it's like, oh, your inner turmoil, this is what's causing you to
talk
manifest.
About energies and stuff like that.
To manifest this. But he had to get sick.
In order to get better.
In order to get better. He had to process all that gunk, which is poison. Just like us, we've had to
do that.
process and go through. Like, healing is not this.
It's not linear.
No, and healing is not like a dirty dish that you just add soap and water and it cleans it.
You need to go back and do even deeper cleaning.
You have to, it's a process. It's having to go back and confront that what was a truth was a lie. And the
unlearning and the...
it's a process. It's dirty, it's uncomfortable, and it's difficult. And so,
I had a recent realization of just the depth of work that I've done myself. I'm not finished, but...
Truth. I'm not finished. There's stuff that I... Sorry,
I was going to say...
Yeah, finish what you're going to say.
I was going to say, I actually... still am in contact with the counselor who helped with the majority of my healing, and I recently just had a one-off session with them because I actually graduated summer of last year, and just randomly needed a session just to reconnect on some things I was battling with. But it was a great session, and at the end of the session, I go over to Mom, And I'm like, I need a hug. She
Yeah.
said, oh no, was it bad? I said, no. And I just decided to sob, and she's just so confused.
Yeah.
And what happened was, there was just a realization of just not to pat myself on the back or not to have a big ego. It's just, I've worked so hard in my healing journey.
Yeah.
And to see that 2024 version of me is completely different than 2022 version of me when I moved here in Bakersfield. I just remember the emotional low, extreme low that I was in.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another episode on its own as well. To then, in a matter of 14, 16 months, just that vast difference, insane. And I cried at this recent session because it just brought me back to, one, she's an extremely safe and biblical standing woman who she ended up giving me resources. She didn't directly tell me, but she gave me the resources to say, you should probably break up with him. That, yes?
No, I was like, go ahead. No, like, it's just, for whatever reason, when you said breakup, I thought Taylor Swift, because all her songs are about breaking up.
Yeah.
We're never getting back together.
Yeah, we're not singing Taylor Swift. All this to say, the point I'm trying to make is that there's so much healing that goes on.
Sure.
And 2 years after, let's say 2 years after breaking up, there's still a lot of random moments here and there. But my experience first out of the gate was extreme, hit the ground. Didn't want to run, but we ended up crawling into the healing journey.
Sure.
And then golly, there was just a lot of emotional turmoil and chaos that I was going through at that time in the healing.
Oh, yeah.
And what you were referring to in Airbender of just needing to get sicker.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, airbending healing.
No, needing to get sicker before just processing all the gunk out and doing the detoxification of some sort.
Well, and I'll say too, I geographically live elsewhere. We're not telling you where we live.
We don't want stalkers.
No, we don't want stalkers. But
please no.
I'm not here geographically often.
Yeah.
I'm here for holidays, birthdays maybe. I'm trying to change that this year. With work. Just with work. No promises, just with work. But I will say, yeah, no, there is a difference. I noticed a difference from when you moved back here 2 years ago. Not here in the house, but just
Sorry. I'll censor
we're gonna
that.
bleep that.
Sorry. The powers of post-production.
Our hometown. And compared to where you're at now.
Yeah.
Our relationship is different. You process differently. You're not who you used to be. I mean, I remember when you moved back, you wanted to live with me eventually.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember I told you.
I didn't like you back then.
No, she did not. Well, and so with that, it's like you probably don't remember how I used to be before my transformation, So you've only known me kind of just how I've been since you can remember.
Yeah.
Because my transformation happened away from here. It happened a long time ago.
I was going to be mean.
What?
You were skinnier back then.
I was a lot skinnier back then.
I was too.
And so were you. But no, I mean, where I'm going with that is, you used to be.
Do it. Say it.
No, so like a long time ago, this was so fun because my sister would be like, I have a problem with you. I'd be like, okay, let's talk about it. She'd be like, no, I need a process. And it'd be like days before we would revamp it.
And I'm like, process.
And I'm like, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's talk about it. Let's hash it out. Let's fight. And you'd be like, no. But I'm going to tell you that I have a problem with you. And I'm angry. But I'm going to retreat away. And that would always make me mad and it would make me mad just because I think when you have to be someone who takes accountability for your life, makes a hardcore choice. And I'm just talking about myself.
Yeah, no.
To like, I'm going to make a hardcore decision in my life. I have to be self-sufficient. I have to do this alone.
Yeah.
And you want to process stuff. You want to talk about stuff. You do the work so that you can get there. And when you're dealing with someone who hasn't done the work, it's frustrating. And you were going through your own stuff, so it wasn't anything like...
Back then, though, realize it now, anyways, that I would use tactics from healing. I need to process it, or I'm mad at you. But the whole jab and run away, I was abusive. I was literally becoming my abuser.
Oh, my favorite thing to use against you, because I would do it too, because the only way you would hear me would
And then we had a lovely conversation to say, please don't do that again.
Well, no, I remember, like...
the poor people over here are like, what are they talking about?
No, like, my sister would be like, I'm triggered. I'm like, Ellie, the wind blew and you're triggered. Like, that would be like your excuse. That would be your excuse just to not go there. That was your excuse to go.
Like emotionally not go to that.
Yeah, that was your way to say, I don't want to talk about this, and I'm going to use the therapy that I've learned, but I haven't really applied yet, to block you out. But all this to say...
just because the people say they go to therapy doesn't mean that they're healed. Because I
case in point,
misuse that
well,
and use it as an excuse for me to stay put wherever I was, and you guys are the problem.
Yeah, well, and I forgot why we were talking. Oh, I'm like, why are we talking about this? Because when she moved back, into the home that we grew up in. So this is my house. She moved back into her parents' house, knowing that her abuser was going to be there, was probably going to use the same tactics as before. And at a certain point, even though she wasn't really ready to admit hard facts, she at least knew that being in the house over there wasn't good.
Yeah.
And she had asked me, she's like, can I move in with you? Because at the time you're going out for this job, and you're like, this would be great for me because I have to pay off my debt. It was that.
Oh, yes.
That job.
Yes.
And
I'm like, there's so many of them.
I know. This is 2 years ago. But I told her, I said, the only way I'm going to let you live with me is if we sit down and have a hardcore conversation about where we're at, our relationship with each other, because we didn't have a relationship when she came back. We were fine in terms of, like, we could be around each other, we loved each other,
but I didn't face.
But there was a lot of stuff. So, and we'll get into that. But I pretty much told her, the only way that you're going to live with me now is if we lock the doors.
Yeah.
And we have a hardcore conversation, and you can't say you're triggered. You can't say I need time to process. You need to sit with me for a few hours, and we need to hash this out. And she didn't.
How did I respond to that? Because I remember you saying that. I don't remember how I responded or reacted to it.
Well, you never got the job, so you had to stay over there. So you didn't
have to. That was my excuse.
You didn't have to. But eventually, the situation resulted into where she needed to get out. And I said yes. And then from there...
We'll talk about that, too, because that's its own thing.
Right. But then from there, we did work on ourselves. We worked on our relationship. And I know I'm talking a lot here, but case in point, abuse has ripple effects.
Yeah.
Healing, time does not heal wounds.
No.
Jesus and intentional healing heals wounds. Meaning, you have to be willing to go to work.
Yeah.
And do it. And there are some people who are willing to do the work, and there are some people who would rather die and not do it. And I say that because I remember probably about in 2021, before you came back, I bought a book because I was struggling in relationships with a few friends that I had because for whatever reason things just weren't meshing. And I bought a book, a Christian book, and it was called How to Have a Relationship with Anybody. And I remember reading through it, and there was a part where it talked about, this guy was talking about how we, when we're hurt, how we manifest, how that hurt manifests in relationships. And it was talking about, like, people will, be passive aggressive, people will people please. But there was this part where it said, you withhold.
Yeah.
And I realized that I did that, and that stemmed from my abuse. So here I am on the cusp of turning like 30, and I'm like, yeah, I still have remnants of abuse that I have to work on. Like, I thought I was good. I thought like I was.
You were happy.
Well, you know, I mean, not that I necessarily care about that. You know,
Okay.
like I'm 100% better. Like I wasn't in that mindset.
Okay.
But I think a lot of times when you go through abuse and you knock out like the big pillars, you kind of think like, okay, it's all said and done.
Did a lot of
But
the hard
it's
work.
those aftershocks where you don't realize that certain things permeate out into other areas. And I realized, wow, yeah, that's what he did to me. He would withhold. And that's what I do to punish people who hurt me. I just withhold. I don't talk to you. I give you the silent treatment. I make you feel alone. And I'm punished. Like, I was like, that's effed up. Like that, like, and I didn't like that about myself. So I was like, okay, I need to go.
At least you were willing to look into it, though.
But again, that's the power of healing. Because when you're in the healing spot, it's not about your ego. It's not about, look how good I am. It's humbling yourself, going, I'm not okay. I don't have it all together. I need help.
Yeah.
And
I can't do it on my own.
Yeah, and I can't do it on my own.
No.
And so, and at that time, no one was like calling out a blind spot in me. You know, it was
no
like,
one could.
Well, no, I mean, I had friends, but no one was saying like, hey, you know, you do that to me. Or I notice like when I make you upset or we get into a fight, I can't get in touch. Like, no one was telling me that. So I didn't have people telling me
that makes sense.
But I found out in a book that I bought because I thought I was having issues in another area.
Wow.
This brought up a different issue. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a player in this game, you know? And so that's kind of the thing, too. That's good about why we're talking about stuff, because we will find other things that are your, like, what you believe back then, what I believed back then. We'll find similarities, and we're still finding out truth from each other. We're still finding out stuff of, like...
I forget my childhood, and you remind me.
Well, no, but, like, we'll forget stuff that... Like, and we'll talk about this later, but there was one time, probably earlier 2024, where you were talking about like, oh yeah, you know, when it came to speaking as you, as Ellie, you know, abuser, me, and our brother, even though we were kind of set apart from Zach and Mom, I was a third wheel between abuser, me, and brother. And I was like, really? Because I'm like, and from my experience, I thought y'all were the perfect throuple. Like, I thought you guys were the perfect triplet people, and like you all got along.
I was third wheeling younger brother.
You know, and yet we grew up in the same house. And even after I left, and even after all of that, I still had this belief that, you know, wow, Ellie, like, thought like she had like this perfect relationship with her abuser and with her brother, and wow, and you were like, well, actually no, like, yeah, a little bit, but I actually felt like I wasn't as close. And I was like, really? And that was just a recent revelation. And that's just us talking about things, and it helps us even have a better relationship because it carves out those false truths and narratives that we have built up about each other or about our remembrance of the past. And that's why it's good to talk about stuff.
There's times, even, not to put you on blast, but there's been times where I've even spoken up because there's enough of a foundation amongst you as Zach and Mom, where I've even spoken up of just, I need to say this out loud as Ellie to make sure it's not the truth. Can you guys confirm that with me real quick? Mm-hmm. I have a what's it called? I have an awareness that makes...
Yeah, like this. Like,
I'm thinking!
I know. Like,
imagine if I had a stress ball. That's what I'm trying to think right now. I don't have one.
She's milking a cow.
No! Disgusting. No. There's been a couple times, probably twice, and probably more than that, where I've said out loud, okay, right now, guys, I am feeling like I'm third wheeling, and you two are hitting it off, which is great, but I'm over here feeling like I'm the odd one out. No, that's not the case. Or I just needed affirmation of knowing, like,
Sure.
This situation has been ingrained in me since childhood that this is your guys' lingo,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the odd one out. So
Mm-hmm.
now knowing that, I know the power that I have in speaking that out and saying,
True.
hey, I just need to know if this is the truth or not. I need to hear it from you guys. Because one of my love languages is words of affirmation. So having that fed, don't... All that to say...
You look horrible.
You said that earlier.
I did. Love you.
All that to say that there's now been enough skin in the game with each other as brother and sister where
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to speak up and say, hey, I'm struggling. I need help.
Right.
And it's just, I still deal with the wounds of my abuser.
Sure.
Granted, I'm only 2 years out, but still, there's still flashbacks or emotions that I'm reminded of, and it draws me back into that.
Oh, sure.
And I'm trying to just dig out of that to survive, you know?
No, dude, totally. I mean, I remember, again, this isn't a competition, this is just sharing now.
No.
But, like, I remember not necessarily recently, but, like, just talking about, like, you know, you think you make strides and then something comes up and you're like, oh, that's still a soft spot. Probably now, too, even though I don't have a current example of this. But I remember back when I was going through my healing and I would have friends in college and they would invite me over, you know, to their parents' house. And their fathers were nice to me and were kind to me and would give me, like, Christmas presents. I was like, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
And I would have, like, a mental breakdown.
Oh.
You know? Because, like, you're just like, I don't know.
You don't know how to receive it.
I mean, I had to receive it because if not, it would be rude. But yeah, like it was
just
it
emotionally
was,
handle it. Yeah.
It was just like there's just ripple effects, you know, and you know, going off with what you're talking about, you know, I've always told you it's gonna suck for you and your brother because when our mom is no longer here, you're gonna get your mother just an older brother form because there are a lot of similarities between mom and
you guys are so alike.
But there's also a lot of things where you and her are alike, you know. So but
we are half our mom.
Yeah, you know. But
you just have the back. No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, but isn't that kind of messed up though? Because if you think about it, Mom and I, we only had each other.
Yeah.
We were, and this isn't just us having a bad misinterpretation of words, and I thought, like, I felt that you didn't like me. Like, we were told,
yeah, you
are a hindrance to me. I am jealous of you and your mother. I can't have a relationship with you, Mom, unless Zach is out of, like we were told we are public enemy number one. So we only had each other.
Yeah.
Because he didn't like us. He didn't love us.
Father? Abuser?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't love us, right? And then yet we're still trying to have a careful relationship with you and brother. So how effed up is it? He pins the two people as they're bad.
Mom
and because now they have a relationship of their own because that's the only one they have, you will never have that. And when they're laughing, it's about you.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what. Yeah.
So
it's effed up.
Here, Mom and I are just basking in something that's just second nature because we only had each other, and here you are as an adult going like not even as a kid, but even current time going. I feel left out. I feel like I can't connect that way, or I feel like, and there's a truth to this. There is so much history that Mom and I have.
There is truth in that.
And relationship and memories and stuff that you are not a part of and
Correct.
you never will be a part of, you know.
And I'm not hurt by that now.
No, but back then.
Oh, I was very sensitive.
You know. And just like there's stuff that you and her have now that I'll never have.
Right.
You guys will have experiences that I'll never have.
Right.
But how effed up is that? That in the abuse, abuser tried to he isolated us.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like he put us in a ditch with rags and table scraps, and he gave you steak.
Yeah.
And then, but convinced you that the bread
that
was more tastier and that was actually better than what he could give you, and how horrible are them that they're off in the ditch. They don't love you because they're off in the ditch. If they loved you, they'd be right next to you.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty,
this was intentional, you guys. Like
pretty
this,
awful.
This wasn't like, oh, he just didn't know any better.
No.
Like, no, he knew.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
He knew.
He was.
And he chose.
Yeah.
He knew and he chose.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There's a lot of pieces to it, and we've been recording for a very long time.
Yeah, it's been about an hour.
A little over an hour.
Yeah. So
we said
so
it would
much,
be a
like,
30
this
minutes.
will be like 20 minutes. Yeah, no.
Introduction. This is our chaos.
Yeah. So I mean, like, you know, God bless the
Yeah.
fact that, you know, we were spared from that.
Yes.
You know, I used to tell Mom all the time, I'm like, all things considering, like, I should be, like, addicted to drugs and alcohol and, like, sex and stuff. As our father was a pastor, you guys. Like, our abuser was a pastor. And still chose to do all this in the midst of that calling in his life. So, and yet, we're still Christians. We're not deconstructionists. We're not people who've been like, let me just, not to say that there's not, I do believe as a Christian, you go through life.
Choose your words wisely.
No, I'm not, well, deconstruction has its own thing.
Sure,
so I'm not going to get into that. But there are certain things where you kind of go throughout theology and go like, I was taught to believe this, but when I read the Bible, it actually says this.
Right, no, I
so
get it.
I'm all about the Word, and I'm all about doing what the Bible says, okay? Where was I going with this?
I don't know.
Hold on. What was I talking about?
I don't know.
Wait, hold on. What was I talking about? Talking about deconstruction? No. What was I talking about?
All things considered, you would be...
Oh, yeah, no. There we go. Thank you. No, all things considered, I should have been... You look at people who grew up in the church, who had abuse, they're not doing good things.
Spoiler alert, I was in that season.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
I don't know what season that is, so that'll be brand new information.
No, you know it.
I do?
The substances, the relationships. You do know that.
Yeah, I do know that. Yeah. I thought you were talking about other things. I don't know why.
I don't know these other things you speak of.
Me neither, because you've never done them. But found out. But like no, like because of the abuse that I experienced, and again, it's not a competition.
No, it's not.
You know, but like I was beat into the ground. Like I was the abuse that was especially crafted for me should have led me to a life where as soon as I was 18 I moved out and I would be with the wrong crowd and I would just go as far away from God and the church and family as possible. I should be like an addict. I should be an alcoholic. I should be dying of like every disease from those things. You know, I should be. And it's only by the grace of God that like I have a gift of faith where that wasn't destroyed. And you know, and honestly my abuse came out because other people were using their spiritual gifts and saw what I was going through even though they never knew me. And I could have said no thanks. And I could have gone and tried to mask and numb and do my own thing, you know. But it's only by the grace of God that we were spared from that, because the abuse that we endured should have caused us to go the complete opposite direction. And I will say probably, even between the two of us, there's probably areas in our life where we weren't living for the Lord.
Sure.
We weren't in church. We weren't doing those things. However, I would say we never gave up on God.
For as extreme that we could have gone.
Yeah. Even when we were at our worsts and masking and trying to figure out the truth and going through our own hurt, I will say we probably both strayed a little bit away from the Lord in terms of like, I'm not in church, I'm not plugged in, I'm not
just wait
reading
until
my
we
Bible.
talk about mine.
Well, you know, case in point. but we didn't give up on God. We didn't become atheists. We didn't put a middle finger up to the sky. I'm not saying there wasn't anger there, but
I don't think you know my entire story 100%.
No, I kind of do know.
No.
No, I do. Well, but again, like you didn't walk away.
Not that you know of.
She walked away. Well, great. I get to learn more stuff. I like that. Well, okay. Well, I'll just speak for myself. No. But case in point, like we both should have gone a complete drastic U-turn
and stayed there. I think for me, anyways, that's the biggest point.
No, like we both should have.
Yeah.
We both should have.
Well, it was to set up. All the enemy wants to do is to get us as far away from the Lord.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened to him. And not saying that our abuser is directly the enemy, but there's evil schemes within him. Oh no, is that where we're different?
No.
But all this to say, I'm not saying that our abuser is the enemy.
No, Satan is not in him.
No, but there are evil schemes within him.
Yeah.
Just to make it simple.
We'll get into that.
All that to say.
That will be an episode where I think we will talk about that.
Sure.
But yeah.
All that to say that the plans that our abuser had was set up for us to be as far away from the Lord as possible.
Yep.
And there may have been a small season, an extreme season for me, but thank God that he gives us second, third, fourth, fifth chances for me anyways, because now I'm not stuck. You're not stuck in that space where we weren't as close to the Lord as where we are now.
And I think that's a good way to kind of wrap this up is the fact that that's one of the reasons why we want to talk about this. You know, for you guys, this might be a word salad and this might not hit home for any of you, you know, but that's kind of why it's worth making this podcast, talking about this stuff, because we should have gone a completely different way. We should not have relationship. We should not have had the breakthroughs that we had because
amongst
of
ourselves
how
and with each other,
because of how determined the abuse was intended to be, how damaging that abuse was intended to be.
Yeah.
And that's that's why our channel is called Purim Continuum.
Oh yes, please explain it.
Yeah, so when I was coming up with the name, this was the name of my blog. I wanted to write a blog. And I came up, I didn't come up with Purim, but Purim's always existed. Purim was the, I don't know if you know this, it's really interesting. Well, hold on.
Yeah.
No, okay, so what's interesting is Purim is the celebration in the Bible at the end of Esther, where the Israelites, Hebrews, God's chosen people, celebrated the fact that Haman was not successful in his plans to annihilate them. So Purim is a celebration that celebrates the fact that the Lord spared them from the evil that was directed their way. And that's that is our story. Like what was intended for destruction and death did not prosper, and in fact we were spared. And I think that's why I was like, let's make this a podcast, because this doesn't just apply to me, this applies to you, and this is our story. We're here because God spared us for whatever reason. He spared us, and the best thing that we can do,
because he loves us, is the answer.
Well, yes, but he has plans for our story that we will never know.
Exactly.
And the best thing that we can do is talk about that and give God the glory in that.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. You know, yes, we did the work. We worked on ourselves, but it's only because of God's purpose that we are here and we're talking about this. And I don't think this is going to be where our ministry ends, but this is definitely where it starts. And what I was talking about was, I didn't know. It's actually kind of funny because last night we were doing like our Bible, like go a whole year Bible challenge.
Devotional.
Yeah. And we were in Genesis, and I had to get the part in Genesis where it went through all
the lineage,
the genealogies, and oh gosh, sorry Lord, love you, but man, I don't know why that was important. However, I just had not a memory, but
flashback,
a recollection that what's interesting is in the Bible, yes, it's really easy to get bored by those genealogies, and it's really easy to get bored by all these, like the Amalekites and the Canaanites and all these enemy tribes in the Old Testament, right? But what's interesting, because this ties to Purim, Haman was a descendant of a tribe that the Israelites did not kill.
Okay.
So, and I don't quote me on this, it's in the Bible.
Okay.
I can't remember where it was in chronological order, but I want to say it was before King David. So King Saul, the problematic king, where the Israelites were like, Lord, we don't want you, give us a king. He's like, fine, here, take Saul, he sucks. You're going to wish you had me. And the Lord had the Israelites kill neighboring tribes.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if it was under Saul's direct leadership, but they were told to kill, I think it was the Amalekites. And they either didn't kill all of them or they chose not to kill at all. And Haman comes from that, because Haman actually, in the book of Esther, it gives him Haman the Amalekite, or I think it was the Amalekite, whatever his tribe name was. He was a descendant of a tribe that the Lord told his people to kill and destroy, and he didn't. And he was a surviving relic of a past that always was supposed to be conflict with the Hebrew people. And I'm not saying this is a takeaway from the book of Esther, but it's really interesting that the Bible attributes his lineage that way. That does show, you can make an argument to say, if you don't deal with your stuff, it's going to come out in future generations, and it's going to affect you, and you don't know. Like, that was one guy that wanted to kill an entire population in Persia. What, Persia? I think it was Persia. Wherever Esther was at. Well, because that was back in the time.
We're going to need to study our Bible.
Well, because that was back in the times where it was Babylon, where the Israelites were held captive. Mm-hmm. The temples were destroyed. Mm-hmm. Israel wasn't a thing, and neighboring kingdoms absorbed them. So what's really interesting in Esther is that God isn't mentioned anywhere in that book, which is really interesting. Hmm. Like, not direct, like God's not talking to someone directly and giving them instruction.
Let's circle back to our title.
Anyway, but I was going there. Hold on. Pardon. But anyway, but I think that's another reason of why it's good to talk about this, because when you don't shine light on stuff and you let things fester and you let things get infected, it carries on. It carries on. It may not happen in your life. Yeah. It may not happen in your child's life. But the things that you do not
deal with.
Yeah. What is your favorite John Deloney says? We marry our unfinished business.
Oh, I thought it was behaviors of language.
Oh, that too. but we marry our unfinished business. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. The things that you thought you were running away from, you're going to hit again. And yes, you know, that is what the funny thing about Israel means a great struggle. So they're just destined to always struggle with stuff. But if that's not a testament to just we as people, we're always going to struggle with stuff. But I always find it interesting that Haman was a person who came from an old tribe that the Lord said annihilate, and the Israelites didn't, or they didn't all the way.
Right.
And because of that, generations later, here's this guy who's tied to this lineage, this great conflict that's gone on for centuries. Now he's trying again to kill the people. Mm. And that's Satan. He's always been trying to go after Eve and destroy and prevent, Jesus from doing what Jesus came to do, which was to die and be our Savior and pay for our sins. So, I mean, all the more reason for us to talk about this. And Purim Continuum is just a call to a continuous celebration that we are not where we were.
Right.
And we celebrate the fact that we were spared. And what more to celebrate that and talk about that than to share our story and, allow what has caused us to be in the dark and not talk about things. We're ready to do that. So here we are.
Here's to many stories to be told and many truths to be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just pray and call for freedom from this day on, further freedom in you and in me and anyone else who comes across our testimonies. And the enemy can't have a hold into this as much as he wants to try to attack it. And have his schemes to not make technology work, or SD cards remember things, or what have you, or schedules, and we got to figure that out too.
Yeah, but we'll figure that out.
We'll figure it out, but all this to say, the enemy can't have a hold onto this, and we won't let him have a hold onto this, because at the end of the day, Purim Continuum is our stories, and it's not just you and I, and hopefully down the road, it's many more freedom stories to come out of it as well. And that's my heart behind it anyways.
Yeah, and by all means, you guys share your stories with us. Comment, like, private message. Share your stories, and if you give us permission, let us know.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it, and we'll empathize with you.
Sure.
And heck, we'll even make, not videos, but in our podcasts, we'll pray for you.
Absolutely.
Like, by all means, private message us, and we'll read the prayer. We'll read it out loud, and we'll pray for you. And
absolutely,
we'll it won't just be us talking. We can make this as engaging as you want it to be.
Yep.
So we hope that this blesses you, and we hope that it makes sense to you guys, and that you guys don't get bored of it. But
you bully me enough to make it entertaining.
I bully you.
Yeah. You're my sibling. That's like your definition of what you do.
It's my job as your older brother to prepare you for the world. And that's what I've been doing. And the problem is, you must really not like the world, because you don't like what I do.
Yeah, you're telling me to change my clothes before this episode.
Yeah. You woke up that way.
Oh, no!
I know.
No, I said no.
You did.
No.
You had that sweater on.
You're seeing things, because that's not my clothes to wear for bed.
Bed clothes.
No.
It was bed clothes.
No.
Yes, it was.
I just have a very casual sense of fashion. Don't. Well, we'll see you in the next episodes.
Yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episodes. I think what we're going to do is the next at least 2 to 3 episodes is going to be my story.
Okay.
And then it's going to be you. So it's going to be like the next episode is going to be like the abuse.
Yeah.
And then the episode after will be how I got into healing, how I made sense of what that abuse was.
Yeah.
And then the third one after that will be kind of where am I at now?
Yeah.
Like that progress. And then we'll kind of do the same thing, because our abuse interlaps, but I think if we kind of do it,
that's fine.
Back and forth, it just confuses the timeline. So I think
fine.
Just giving that timeline, and I say me first just because I broke away first.
No, that's fine.
And it just kind of makes, we're not arguing.
No, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
I also read our timeline of episodes. So, yeah.
Oh, good. So she does read my emails. Yay.
You make it sound like that I'm a horrible... I don't... You make it sound like that I don't...
Yes. You don't what?
I do read your emails. I looked at your files and your planning. I just do the technological side of things and post-production stuff.
Well, in case you forgot, that's what. We have many plans. We have a lot of episodes that we are going to dive into that we have plans for, but I think we also have that open room to allow God to inspire what we will talk about next. Yeah. And depending on how engaging you guys are,
right, that
can affect what we decide to talk about and that whole structure. So
I think we've had this episode for long enough, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So until next time.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.